Hi, Phanessa here. In this video I'm going to demonstrate how to crochet this beautiful wavy puff stitch here. You can find additional information in the description box of this video. As always, if you need to slow it down, there's a feature to slow down the video. Over and pull up a loop. Again, make sure that, or if you need to speed it up so that I sound like a chipmunk, there's a option for that as well. Wiggle it through all the way to the top, and I'm trying to keep this part as taut as I can, so it's as tight as I can so that it... All right, let's get started. Okay, so at this point I don't know when I'll ever finish this blanket. So what I want to do is provide the pattern for the stitch. So this is going to be a tutorial for the stitch pattern. It's pretty much what I did for the blanket. So this stitch pattern is the Wavy Puff Stitch Sprays. It is in multiples of 17 plus 2. And so I chained 187 plus 2, so a total of 189 stitches. Usually I get away without making a swatch for blankets, but if you want a specific size, I do recommend that you work a swatch first to find out your gauge. This one is wavy, so whatever you chain is not going to be the length of the blanket. But if you want the same size, I went ahead and chained 189. Okay, so I'm going to use the same yarn I used for the blanket, and this is Lion Brand's Pound of Love. It is 1,020 yards long, so it's a pretty big, hefty ball. It is medium weight. It recommends 6mm for the crochet hook, and that is exactly what I used. So I'm using a size J. I recently posted about the importance of grabbing yarn from the same lot, so you'll find the lot number here. I first purchased just one ball from Joann's, and when I decided to make a blanket, I ordered more online, and they had different lot numbers, and you can really tell the difference. So make sure you have the same lot number if you are working on a large project. So you want to chain in multiples of 17 plus 2. So this is 17 stitches. Okay, so I have chained 51 stitches, so that's 3 repeats, and then I'm going to add 2. So 53 stitches. Okay, so the first row is going to be your right side row. We're going to work 1 double crochet into the 4th chain. So counting from your hook, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to work 1 double crochet. So yarn over into that 4th chain. I like to work through the back humps here, gives it a cleaner edge. Yarn over, pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. So this is going to count as a double crochet 2 together. So into the next 2 stitches, next 2 chains, we're going to work a double crochet 2 together. So you want to yarn over into the next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. So we're not going to complete that double crochet. We're going to yarn over into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. So it's sort of like working part of your double crochet. Now you're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Okay, now we're going to work another decrease. So yarn over into the next chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over into the next chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. So now you're going to yarn over and pull through 3 stitches. Now we're going to work our puff stitches. So you're going to chain 1, is a series of decreases and increases to make that wave. Okay, so now we're going to repeat chain 1, and we're going to work a puff stitch into the next stitch. Okay, so the puff stitch, you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Make sure it's a tall loop up to where this part of your stitch is. So we're going to do that 4 times. That was 1, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop. That's 2, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop. That's 3. One more time. So I'm working into the same stitch. So now you should have 9 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 9, chain 1. Okay, so we're going to do that 5 times. You want 5 puff stitches. Yarn over into the next chain stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over into the same stitch, pull up a loop. That's 2 times, 3 and 4. Yarn over and pull through 9, chain 1 to secure. So that's 2 puff stitches. I'm going to work a total of 5. Now over the next 12 stitches, you're going to work 6 decreases. So remember, the decrease is going to be worked over 2 chains. So you'll work on 12 chains, working a total of 6 decreases. Yarn over into the very next chain. I'm still working through the back humps. Pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, into the next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and then to complete your decrease, yarn over and pull through 3. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that 5 more times so that I have a total of 6 decreases. It gets easier once you pass this first foundation. Okay, that's 5. I have 1 more decrease. So there are 6 decreases and worked over 12 chain stitches. You can already see the shape. Now we're going to repeat these 5 puff stitches. Start with a chain 1 and then work your puff stitches. Remember to do that 4 times, so that's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Yarn over, pull through 9, chain 1 to secure. This is my 5th puff stitch, and then don't forget to chain 1, and then I'm ready to work my 6 decreases. So that's what you're going to repeat across. Work 5 puff stitches with chain 1s in between, and then work 6 decreases over 12 stitches. So you want to repeat until you've worked your last set of puff stitches, and then you will have 6 stitches left. On my last puff stitch, so I have 6 stitches left. I'm going to work 3 decreases, so double crochet 2 together 3 times, and that will be worked over the last 6 stitches. So here's the first one. Second, and last decrease. So in most patterns, you always want to match the last stitches to the front stitches. And I only bring that up because usually with the foundation you have your turning chain. So when we skipped 3 stitches and worked into the 4th, this counted as a double crochet 2 together. So there's 1, 2, and 3. So in the end, you also want 1, 2, and 3. So you can see the wave. Whenever you increase, it's going to be your hump, or it's going to be the top part of your ripple or chevron. And naturally this puff stitch is big, so it already helps you, curve your work. But we did put chain ones in between, so that's the additional stitches. And then these are the decrease. So there are 5 puff stitches and 6 sets of decreases. Okay, so we're going to chain 1 and turn. So on the wrong side, you're just going to work 1 single crochet in every stitch. So the very first stitch is here. We're going to work 1 single crochet. Next stitch, you're going to insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. If you need additional assistance with basic stitches, I will link my playlist for that. Okay, so that's 1, 2, and 3. Now there was a chain 1 here, so don't forget to work a single crochet between the decrease and the puff stitch. So there's 1 single crochet on top of the puff stitch. You're going to work 1 single crochet. In the space between, which is going to be the chain 1, you're also going to work a single crochet. So just work 1 single crochet in every stitch across. Make sure you work between the puff stitches as well, and there's also a chain 1 before and after the puff stitches. Okay, so before we started this one, we worked a chain 1, so you have to work a single crochet into this chain space. Same thing on this side, there's a chain space here. You're going to work 1 single crochet. So on this side it'll be harder to see than this side, so you can obviously see the gap. In fact, you can skip the chain 1 if this gap bothers you when you work on the right side. Just remember that you still need to work your single crochet on the wrong side, otherwise you'll mess up your stitch count. Okay, so for the decreases, it's pretty self-explanatory. You just work 1 single crochet on top of every decrease. So remember, there are 6 decreases, so there should be a total of 6 single crochets. Okay, here we are at the puff stitches again. Make sure you place one single crochet on either side and then on top of each puff stitch and in between. So see how this is less noticeable? Just make sure you don't miss that. On top of the puff, in the chain space, on top of the puff, in the chain space. So I'm going to work one single crochet in every stitch. Okay, don't forget the chain space right after the puff stitches. One single crochet on top of each of these 6 decreases. Okay, I'm at the last 3 decreases. So you're going to ignore the turning chain always, because this is one stitch here. The first 2 stitches on this side, the chain and the first double crochet, that counts as 1 decrease. So when you're working your single crochet on the wrong side, you're just working 1 stitch right on top of both of those stitches. Row 3, right side, chain 3 and turn. So we're going to skip this stitch because it belongs to the chain 3, and we're going to work into the second stitch. And then these 2 together will count as your first decrease. So we'll work 1 double crochet in the next stitch. Whoops. And that's going to count as your double crochet 2 together. Over the next 4 stitches, work 2 decreases. So double crochet 2 together twice. There's 1 and 2. Okay, now we're ready to work our puff stitches again. Okay, we're going to work 5 puff stitches over the next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the thing to watch out for is make sure your center puff is always right above your center puff. I ran into that problem when I missed it 1 stitch or so. So that's kind of what I look for. And whenever I end my decrease, it's always right above this, the first puff stitch. Okay, so start with your chain 1, work your first puff stitch. So although the chain 1 secures your puff, it counts as a stitch. Okay, so that's your chain 1 stitch there. Next puff stitch. Two, 4, 6. I almost went again. Okay, second. So here's my third, and that's going to be my center puff stitch. Okay, so I want to make sure after I work my third one that it's right above the center puff from 2 rows below. Okay, so it is right directly above it, so I'm good. I had so many that were off-centered and I just kept going because I'm just making this because I don't want to pull it back. I mean, if I were selling it or making it as a gift, I probably would have pulled it back, but nope, I don't have time to frog my work. You just have to fudge it a little bit. Years ago, it would probably drive me crazy and I probably wouldn't be able to handle not pulling it back. Okay, so there are my 5, making sure that the center is right above the center from the previous row of puff stitches. Okay, so that's what you're going to repeat. 6 decreases and then 5 puff stitches. And you will have 6 stitches left at the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you will work your 3 decreases on the last 6 stitches. Okay, so here is my first decrease. Again, don't forget the chain 1 before and after the puff stitches. It's easy to miss this one, and if you do, on the next row, just work a single crochet there. So I wouldn't pull back for that. And make sure your center puff is aligned with the one below it. And let me show you what I look for once I complete my decreases. I spent a lot of time counting it because I was easily distracted. So the one thing I figured out helped me a lot, or just something to look for. So this stitch here, the last stitch is always going to be above your first one. It's actually these two, so right away I can tell there's something wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So somewhere here I have an extra stitch. Okay, I see what I did there. So down here, instead of a decrease, I accidentally worked 2 double crochets, so that's why I have an extra stitch. I was counting on my mistakes to show you how to fix it. I guess I don't disappoint. The last decrease should always be this right on top of this puff and then the stitch right after it. So I know I'm a stitch off. So to avoid pulling back, I'm going to do is just work a 3 double crochet stitch together. Okay, that way I get my stitches to the right count. Okay, and it doesn't look off, you know, the 3 double crochet together. Now I'm going to chain 1 and work my 5 stitches. I mean, if you wanted to pull it back, you could. But it's easy to just kind of work around it. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. And that works if you don't have enough stitches as well. And I will do that on the next row just to kind of show you. 2, 4, 6. Okay, this is my 5th puff stitch. And then when I finish, I usually check to make sure my center puff stitch is in the right place, right above the center of this one down here. Good, so I'm just going to work my 6 decreases. 1. Hopefully this one's correct so I can show you where you're supposed to end. So I didn't count this, I just kind of lost count already, but that's what I mean by things to look for. So I am working my last decrease, and I know this because here's my first puff stitch from below, right above it, and the stitch right after, so in between is where I should end my 6th decrease. Okay, so right above the first and 1 over. Now I'm going to work my puff stitches. 2, 3, 4. Whoops. That would be 1 too many. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Do a quick check. Center puff is on top of the center there. So we're on our last 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to work 3 sets of double crochet 2 together. 1, 2, and 3. So that's it, guys. That's the repeat. You're going to repeat rows 2 and 3. Row 2 is the single crochet in every stitch. Just make sure that you have 6 single crochets on top of the decreases, 1 single crochet on either side of the puff stitches, 1 on top of each of the puff, and then in between the puff stitches are the chain 1 space, so you want to work your single crochets in those as well. So I'm going to repeat this side. Don't forget the space between the first puff and the last decrease. So I'm going to work one less stitch here so that I can show you how to fix that as well if you don't want to pull it back. So for the purpose of that part of the tutorial, I'm going to skip a stitch between the last decrease and the first puff. So the one thing that I kept doing was missing the space between the last decrease and the first puff stitch. So I'm going to skip that just to show you how to fix that on the other side. So I'm going to skip that by accident and continue on. So this will result in having less stitches than I need on the other side. Earlier I showed you what to do if you had too many stitches, and that one was actually a real accident. But I'll show you what to do when there's not enough stitches. And at this part here, remember I said it should end right here on the first puff and then also the stitch right after it. So I ended my decrease right on it, so I know that I'm off by a stitch. The first time I showed you how to fix it if you had too many stitches. If I count this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I've only have 5, so I have one less stitch. It was right here that I skipped the single crochet in between. So you can always pull back to where the error is, and if you don't know where the error is, I would pull it to somewhere in the center of those decreases. So here's the third one. I'm just going to pull it out. Okay, so I have 2 decreases. Now because I have one less stitch, I'm going to start this decrease on this stitch here. So this is already worked. See how this stitch is coming out of it right there? I'm going to insert my first stitch there. Okay, so right into that same stitch as this last one, work my double crochet 2 together starting there, and then into the next one. Okay, so what that does is it uses up a stitch from this one, and it's hard to tell the error, but it also brings you back to the correct stitch count. Okay, so let me continue. That was my 3rd decrease, 4th, 5th, and the 6th. So whenever I stop at my 6th stitch, I want to make sure that it ends right above the first puff and the stitch right after. So now I'm at the right place. I can continue working or completing my work. So it's not a big deal if you have a small swatch like this to rip out, but when you're working with a very long blanket and a very large blanket, it's a lot of work just to go across one row with the puff stitches and the decreases. So those were the things that I found to help me move along with the most minimal effect visually to my blanket. So it's up to you. If you really must pull it apart, then go ahead. But if you just wanted to correct it, that is how you will correct those mistakes. Okay, so let me just finish this row, do a recap. Okay, so let's recap. You're going to repeat rows 2 and 3. So 2 is the wrong side, which is just a single crochet. When you're working the single crochet, you want to make sure that you work into the space between the puff stitches, on top of the puff stitches, and in between each of the puff stitches, which is the chain 1 space. On the right side, where you work your decreases and puff stitch, you want to make sure that when you start, you work your very first double crochet to the next stitch, and then these 2 count as a decrease stitch. So you always start and end with 3 decreases. When you work your decrease, even in the beginning, you always end right on top of the first puff using the stitch right above it and the one in the space right after it. When you work your puff stitches, after you've worked your 5, stop to make sure that the center puff is aligned. It should be the center of the 5. And if you have too many stitches when you're working your decreases, make sure that you work a double crochet 3 together, and you can work that in the center. That would be the ideal spot. I know that I worked that one over here on this side, but ideally right in the center here would be good. And if you don't have enough stitches, say you're one less, then when you work your double crochet 2 together, you want to start the first one in the previous one. So you're basically borrowing the stitch from the last set of decreases. Hope that makes sense. All right, so just repeat those 2 rows along with my tips, and you just repeat until you're happy with your size. Again, I'm not done with my blanket, so I don't know how long I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go probably until I run out of yarn, or if I feel like it's getting too big. Yeah. So that is it. I really love this stitch, and I know a lot of you really love it as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please consider liking and subscribing, and don't forget to hit the notification button so you'll be notified every time I post a video. And if there's something you'd like to see, go ahead and leave it below in the comments, or you can send me an email and let me know what types of videos or which specific videos you'd like to see. So I'll see you next time.